If I wanted to put things simply, there are two kinds of games. Those that require sharp thinking, analytic mind and strategic approach, and those that focus on nimble fingers, quick reactions and godlike dexterity. Oddly enough, Ports of Call falls somewhere in between on the spectrum, leaning slightly towards the earlier kind. But before we go any further, please hit those like and subscribe buttons below. It's just a couple clicks for you, but helps me more than you know. Thanks! On the first glance, Ports of Call is a business simulation game where you manage a global fleet of freight ships, balancing those profits and losses for the sake of your bottom line, all to grow your company into an international transport powerhouse eventually. And while it's actually a correct description of the game, it's also not all that it is. The game is full of mini-events that are more skill and dexterity based rather than requiring careful planning. That said, let's start where all reviews should start, so at the beginning. Upon starting the game you have to give it your name, think of one for your shipping empire and choose a home port. This choice is quite important as based on your initial location, it will decide where you will be able to travel to and what your starting cargo can be. It is also where all your new ships will be purchased. It is not final, as if you really want to or need to, it can be changed later on. But for the big chunk of initial gameplay, it will be a deciding factor on your profits. Vancouver, that I've chosen for the recording of this video, is one of the few pretty solid choices. So if you're unsure what to pick, it's not a bad start. Anyway, you begin with probably appropriate for 1987, when the game was released, few $1 million. In 2022, that would most likely not be enough even to fuel a ship, not to mention purchase one, but that's beside the point. With this chunk of change you have to get yourself a ship or two. They are divided into three groups. High-tech ships, which are brand new top-of-the-line liners that you won't be able to afford for quite a few hours of your initial gameplay. That said, when you do, for these you only pay 50% initially and the rest is repaid in time. Then there are pre-owned ships, which are a bit older models, still very good and most likely will be the first available to you after your first big financial break. They're not bad, usually a little beaten, but in general, if kept well, will serve you for years. And finally, low-cost ships. Now, this will be your bread and butter for the first few hours. They are very old, seen better times and have to be kept in tip-top shape, or otherwise they may quite literally fall apart and sink at any given moment. And it's this that you'll want to buy one or two at the start of the game. Make sure not to spend everything you're given, as you'll need money for fuel, repairs, tax service and others. Alright, so you've got your first ship and are ready to start earning big and living large. So what can you do? There are a few things actually. There's the maintenance, so either refueling or repairing your ship. And a note here that in general it's a good practice to never leave port with less than 75% of fuel in tanks and at least 50% in ship condition. Ideally, always keep the ship over 60%, as otherwise its chances of sinking as a result of some unpredictable occurrence are quite a bit much higher. Fuel price also changes in time and port by port, so it's worth to fill the ship up in full when prices are lowest, ideally below $100 per ton. But I'm sure you would have figured this out yourself, right? Okay, then we have the main meal of this game in form of charters. This is where you'll see a list of available ports to travel to from the one that you're in, and cargo that's waiting there currently. It's worth pointing out that as much as the destinations you can travel to don't change in individual ports, cargo does over time. Meaning that if there's nothing good to haul, and you feel as if you'd lose money on fuel and repairs moving something, it may very well be better to lay up and wait for a week or two, until new cargo becomes available. And since we're on the subject, there are two kinds of cargo, regular and timed. Regular you pick the contract for, load it up, transport, unload and bada beep, bada boom, easy money. Timed requires getting from point A, being where you are, to point B in a certain time, with huge penalties per each day of delay. It's not difficult to guess that in general timed cargos pay more, sometimes 2 or 3 times more than others. Because of the penalties, however, it is crucial to take not only time and distance, but also your ship's speed and fuel efficiency in mind, as a delay of just a week might in some extreme cases cost you more than you would have earned successfully completing the haul. So you're off. Your first ship or ships are moving something somewhere, and you're on your way to become the company of likes of Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates and Elon Musk. Slowly but steadily, right? Well, maybe. But the aforementioned events pop up here, on the map. While your ships are traveling, things happen and you may just be in the center of some of these. And the first that you're most likely to encounter will be strike of tax service workers that will either force you to leave the port with your cargo or dock in one by hand. In World of Ports of Call, dock workers are severely underpaid and they don't hesitate to voice their opinions about it with strikes. Anyway, as much as we really feel for those poor workers and their inequalities, we've got an entirely different problem at hand, quite literally, as each port in the game has a different layout and the difficulty of docking or undocking from these is based mainly on your skills. Then port's layout and your ship's speed, quality and size, and it's all controlled with a mouse. And this is the only thing that I hate about this game. PC port that came out 2 years after Amiga's original did allowed for keyboard controls and it made this part of the game much more manageable. But that's neither here or there, cause we're talking about Amiga's version here anyway. Other emergencies that you'll witness can be something as common as thunderstorms that you can either wait out or sail through, second option always inducing a risk of additional wear and damage to your ship's hull, sometimes however, whether you want it or not, being a necessity to fulfill a time-sensitive contract. But there are also other troubles like rat infestation, iceberg or other ship collision courses that have to be quickly contained or even a survivor raft pickup. And trust me when I say that they always pop up in the worst possible moments. And that is pretty much all of Ports of Call's gameplay loop summed up. You buy a ship, haul cargo avoiding various kinds of troubles, save up money, buy more better ships, rinse and repeat. It may not sound like much, in fact it may sound quite simplistic, but it's very engaging and quite fun to play. Especially though it can be enjoyed in hotseat multiplayer, where up to 4 players can compete in either timed or unlimited time mode. In a way, you could say that Ports of Call is a thinking man's party game. We've spoke about how the game plays, we spoke about what it's about. I think it's time for a word or two on the presentation. Well, when it comes to graphics, if you're here with me in this video, you've pretty much seen everything it has to offer. It's not something we'll be writing home about, it's workable and that's really it. All the ports and ships and events are usually understandable and there's no oddly clashing colors or assets. A nice touch, however, are the views in each port's window, displaying an important building or a structure of the city that you're in. Sound-wise, Ports of Call is bad. Really bad. There's no music to speak of, apart from a short tune when you're setting up the game first, and beeps and bops and engine hum that you occasionally hear in the ports are everything that you can really expect here. It could be argued that a game like that does not require much, and it's a fair point, but if there were a few elevator tunes running in the background on loop, it may have had a bit less of a rough feel to it. Honestly, going into it, I believe that I will rank Ports of Call much higher. Perhaps it was the melancholy of how I remembered it, being played with a couple of friends competing who could run more prosperous shipping empire, or just my memory failing me once more, omitting little annoyances and only having me remember good bits about it. One way or another, I love Ports of Call. I really do. But the way the ship controls makes it overly difficult for no good reason. PC Sport fixed that, perhaps one but still quite big annoyance with a simple keyboard controls fix. This, however, is Amiga's original review as it was back then and still is today. And as that, all I can give it is a 7 out of 10. It's a fun game to play alone and a much better one when played against others. If you never had a chance to play it and like business management games, chances are you'll like this unique title as well. That said, I'd like to thank you for sticking around until now. And if you liked the video, please hit those like and subscribe buttons below. It really helps more than you know. And if you're in a more giving mood, you may consider a small donation. It would go towards upgrading my aging editing rig, getting a better mic and maybe a camera, which in turn hopefully would make my content noticeably better. Details are in the description below. For me, however, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time.